But first, we are so honored to welcome to the program Grammy-winning composer Libby Larsen, who 6 years ago helped us launch our 20 by 2020 project with the very first commission. Libby, how are you doing, and from where are you joining us?
Well, hi, Matt and Annabelle. I'm doing just fine, thank you. I spent the afternoon with my grandsons and my daughter and son-in-law, so I'm feeling very happy. Haven't seen them for quite a while, so this was great. I'm in Minnesota, just a little bit north of you, where it is 4 degrees today, and it started out snowing, believe it or not. But the sun is out now, and it's a wonderful Mother's Day. I'm really happy to be with you in Houston. The miracle of technology. It's so cool.
That's right. Happy Mother's Day to you, Libby. And since it's Mother's Day, maybe we could start out with a little conversation about some special memories you have of your mother and how maybe she inspired you to become the person you are today.
Well, yes. Memories have been flooding in today about my mother, especially knowing that we were going to do this show. I thought I would talk about how much time we all spent in the kitchen. I had 4 sisters and my mother, and we washed the dishes. No dishwashing machinery in those days, and we cooked all the meals. Why I'm telling this story is that my mother had a record player in the kitchen, and we were all allowed to put our favorite record in a stack on the record player. So my mother would put Broadway musicals. My sister would put the latest heartthrob. I think it was Ricky Nelson at the time. My little sister would put Burl Ives on, the favorite kids. And I really loved classical Russian music. So I would put on Shostakovich symphonies and Prokofiev, and we would listen to those records while we were doing our work, and we would dance around. And I think that really set the tone for why I compose what I compose. But really, my mother loved music, all kinds of music. I forgot to say, she also put on stride boogie piano, which was her favorite kind of music. So we learned how to be disciplined about our daily life and yet listen to music and dance every day of our lives. And I have to say that I do that still today, every single day. Thanks to my mother, a good German mother.
Sounds like a really nice variety of music that you had going on there.
We really did. She had music on all the time. No stereos yet, even in those days. But we played the 78 records. Remember those? No, and we always had a stack this tall on the record player, and it was really music morning, noon, and night around our house. Although I am the only musician in our family, the only one who actually took up an instrument and played it and still play, and of course now compose. The rest of my sisters love music, but I'm the only musician, the only one who caught the bug, shall we say.
Can you tell our viewers what your main instrument was?
Yes. I played piano for 15 years. I started at age 7 and then kept it up for 15 years. I also sang starting at age 5, started singing in Gregorian chant choirs and really kept singing in choirs all the way through graduate school. I had a brief stint thinking I might become an opera singer. That lasted about 6 months until I could see the looks in the audience faces when I was singing, and I realized that I would rather write for instruments than do what you guys so brilliantly do, which is to deliver the music. I thought, ooh, maybe I should give you the music. And I play a little harmonica. I learned the ukulele during the sheltering in place. I decided it was time for ukulele, so I've learned that. Dabbled with electric bass. I dabbled along with it. Which one?
Do we have a ukulele concerto coming up?
How about a chamber piece for ukulele and Apollo?
Okay. I know you did write for the Hardanger fiddle. Is that correct?
I did. Yes, I did. Yes, for inside piano and Hardanger fiddle. Yes, a beautiful instrument. Yeah, I love all the, well, I don't love all the instruments, but I love so many of them. I think I take after Mozart in that way, who wrote, of course, for all kinds of instruments that we're not hearing today, including the glass harmonica. I just love sound, and I really am born to make shapes out of sound, just to communicate what it's like to be alive. We call that composition. And I'm really grateful that I've been able to spend all these years composing music, and now celebrating Mother's Day composing music. It's fabulous.
Well, Libby, it's been 6 years. I know it maybe seemed like shorter or longer, but it's been 6 years since our Sorrow Song Jubilee premiere here in Houston, and
Yeah.
we wanted to maybe ask you to set up. We're gonna show the world premiere performance, which was at Duncan Recital Hall at Rice University in 2014, and this was the inaugural. This is the piece that launched our 20 by 2020 commissioning project, and unfortunately, we were to be together last night for the final concert of the project with our Jennifer Higdon commission, number 20. But you were our first commission, and why don't you kind of set up what Sorrow Song is about, and what maybe what viewers can expect to hear.
Yes, I can. When you contacted me, which by the way was just out of the blue, you just wrote me an email and said, "Would you like to write a piece of music for us?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" Then I heard you play, and I said, "Oh, that's who you are. Yes, of course. I would love to write for you." I had been at in a kind of a strange occurrence. I was a chair of education and technology at the Library of Congress in 2003, poking around in the library, doing all kinds of thinking, and I came across the name Harry Thacker Burleigh, who is a name that's a little more well-known now, but was not so well-known at the time. And curious about him, I began reading and thinking about him, and quickly discovered that in the 1890s, he was one of the most famous musicians in New York, an African-American musician with an absolutely glorious baritone voice. And his grandfather, Harry T. Burleigh, had handed down the whole tradition of African-American spirituals to him. So he was a repository of what we now know as the spiritual tradition. He was a fine musician, and here's where the piece Sorrow Song and Jubilee comes in. He was studying at the National Conservatory for Music in New York at exactly the same time that Antonin Dvorak was there. That was 1892 to 1895. Dvorak quickly discovered in Harry Burleigh a repository of American music that Dvorak would never have been able to discover because, of course, this repository was not written down. It's an oral tradition. So Burleigh and Dvorak formed what I call a creative partnership, and I thought, there's my piece. I'm going to write. I don't know what this piece is. I'm going to write it. Now, with your commission came an amount of time, which I think was 6 minutes or 7 minutes of music that you were asking for. And I thought, oh, this is too big a subject, But then I remembered that Dvorak wrote really one of his most famous pieces, which is the Dumka and Furiant, Opus 12. I think that was in 1884 that he wrote it. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I could take that form, which is a slow and elegiac opening, followed by a very lively dance with shifting kind of meters, all compacted into one piece. And I wonder if I could take that model, but then borrow the tune "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," and muse upon that a tune in a Dumka and Furiant form, but then call it Sorrow Song, which is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Jubilee, the dance. Am I making sense? I hope so. So we're going to hear a very
making sense to us, and let's. Yeah.
Can we hear? So it's going to be.
Let's let our sorry, we lost you there for a second, Libby. But why don't we listen to the piece and we'll discuss a little more.
Okay, great.
right, Libby. It's always so fun to relive that piece, and we performed it, I mean, hundreds of times now, actually. So you should be getting a big check from BMI, right?
It's just thrilling to be back in the hall with you. At the premiere, it's just thrilling. You just can't even imagine how thrilling it is. Oh boy, thank you. It's really fun, and I wish I was getting a big check from BMI. I can buy you guys dinner with it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's open this up to some questions from our viewers. Ben, do we have any questions so far for Libby or for anyone? Okay, let's read this. Hi, Libby. What is your tried and true process for composing a new piece of music? Great question.
That's a great question. Let's see. Well, first is to always remember that that I have instincts about what's going to make a good piece of music, but I always have to put technique in service of the instincts. So for instance, with Sorrow Song and Jubilee, I mean, you are world-class performers, and I need to give you some music that challenges the best in you. And so I try to match a great idea with the technique I need to put the piece together, and then give myself enough time to let them both kind of like a sourdough starter, kind of bubble together until musical ideas. I can really hear the musical ideas in my head. And I hear the whole piece before I write it down. The last thing I do actually is I still work in paper and pencil. So the last thing I do is write the piece down. I spend a lot of time working on the music in my head, because that's where music lives best. For the composer is in the head, not on the computer. So my tried and true process is to always have good ideas, to be really curious about them, but to work as hard as I can to make sure the technique that is available to deliver music that is worthy of you, it comes together at the same time as the idea. Also, I need a lot of space because I'm a kinetic person. You can probably tell I move around a lot. And so I spend a lot of time outdoors, long distance running, gardening, in a beautiful yard like you're sitting in, Matt and Annabelle, just trying to take in nature to balance out all the head work of composition. And that's what works. It seems to work for me almost every time. There's been some failures, but in general, things work.
I think you glean a lot of you glean a lot of your inspiration from your runs. Is that correct? Are you still running how many miles a day? And do you still go through the entire piece in your head?
I do. Yep, I do. I ran this morning for 5 miles. Yep. And I try to do at least 3 and then as many as a day will give me. And I do. If I can get my body tired out, then I can think the music through in my head. Yeah.
Hey, Whitney, would you like to read the next question?
Yes, so Jessica asks, for Libby, what is some music that has influenced your compositional style?
Oh, Jessica, that's also a really great question. I listen to a lot of music. Oddly enough, I tend to listen to I listen to popular music, a lot of it. I listen to a lot of rock and roll, a lot of blues, mariachi music, all kinds of music. I listen to, and I try to let it just live side by side. So there might be a Russian symphony and Chuck Berry in my head at the same time. And then I let Chuck Berry's, let's say, Maybelline, play itself out in the Russian symphony that's in my head. It's kind of craziness going on up here a lot of the time. But I put as much music in my head as I can, and I've decided that like you, like all of us, I'm alive in a world where there are a lot of us who listen to a lot of different kinds of music, and love it. So I am all for letting all kinds of music influence whatever comes off of my pen at the time. Like Sorrow Song, it's American. That really is American music. It comes from the African American tradition, and is filtered through the finest Western European technical training. To me, that's American, and I love writing music that way.